France has been known as a pillar of European stability and the EU's second largest economy, but right now the country is facing a question that would have been unthinkable just a couple of years ago. Is it becoming the new sick man of Europe? First, Germany's economic crisis led to deindustrialization and further economic hardships, but right now, France may be next on the chopping block. And ironically, it's not just Germany or Britain asking this question. This time, the question whether France is next is coming from Italy. Yes, Italy, a country famous for governments so short-lived that they don't even have time to hang their portraits on the wall. But today, Italian newspapers have been reporting on France with what they gleefully call malicious joy. Because in less than 2 years, France has gone through 5 prime ministers, and today the French parliament split into 3 hostile blocs after Macron's disastrous snap elections back in July of 2024 can't even pass a national budget. That's how bad it is. For a country that has always prided itself on a sense of exceptionalism in Europe, this is a new and quite undesirable chapter. And it is getting worse too. The cost of servicing France's massive national debt, which now is more than 3 trillion euros, has exploded. This year, interest payments alone will reach 67 billion euros, which is more than every government department except education and defense. And by the end of this decade, forecasts say those payments could hit 100 billion euros a year, swallowing France's fiscal space and crowding out everything else. In late November, the ratings agency Fitch downgraded France's debt, saying quite plainly what the markets have been signaling for months now: investors are losing faith in France's ability to stabilize its finances and arguably its politics too. This seems very similar to other nations, doesn't it? The United States, for example, its national debt is soaring. The downgrade means borrowing will become even more expensive, and so this is going to become a vicious cycle. And the worst part is that none of this is happening in a vacuum. It is happening in a world already rattled by the West's proxy war on Russia via Ukraine, the United States changing stance on its security priorities under Trump, and in some EU countries, rising populist movements feeding on the economic anxiety. And right now, France of all European countries, is being whispered about in Brussels and Berlin in the same breath as Greece or Italy during the Eurozone crisis. The possibility that Paris may need intervention from the IMF or the European Central Bank for that matter too is no longer a fringe fantasy. It is a scenario that economists are gaming out seriously. So, how did the country that prides itself on elite governance and administrative brilliance end up here? How did this happen? Well, the answer begins in the summer of 2024, when Macron, who was quite frustrated by gridlock, dissolved the National Assembly and called snap elections. He gambled that voters would strengthen his position, but instead, they delivered a parliament split into 3 near equal blocs: the center, the left, and the right, or the far right, as some appear to believe. And in this new 3-way cage match, nobody has the numbers to govern, because whatever one bloc proposes, the other 2 will bring down. It's just simply not a workable situation. So from that moment, France entered a spiral of political paralysis. This brings us to the heart of France's problem today. Nobody can agree on how to fix anything. France spends more on social protection than almost any other country on earth, around 30% of its GDP. It has one of the world's most generous pension systems. It subsidizes everything from unemployment benefits to childcare workers to taxi rides for patients. And on top of that, it spends enormous sums cushioning households and businesses during the pandemic and again when energy prices surged after the EU willingly and quite joyfully cut itself off of Russian energy. Meanwhile, taxes are already among the highest in Europe. Taxes in France stand at roughly 45.6% of its GDP. Raising them further is political suicide. Macron certainly can't afford that. But the problem is, cutting spending is equally explosive. Just suggesting tiny cuts to healthcare transport subsidies brought taxi drivers into the streets. And when Macron pushed through an increase in the retirement age from 62 to 64, the country erupted in protest that lasted months. France's political class is locked in a very bitter ideological war, and because of that, its economic policies are suffering too. The left demands more spending, of course. The right rejects austerity, but also at the same time opposes tax increases. The center can't really govern without one of those two agreeing. And the result is a paralysis, the very thing that markets hate the most. France now finds itself in a position more dangerous than that of Italy, arguably, despite Italy's biggest debt load. And why would that be? Well, because Italy has a government with a majority and a long-term plan. Well, France has neither of those two things. It's got Macron, but investors aren't only looking at debt levels, they're also looking at whether a country is capable of making decisions. And that's when things start looking a bit shaky in France. And right now, France can't make any decisions. We know that very well. Political paralysis has made France the weak link in the Eurozone, according to analysts. Bond markets now price French debt as riskier than the debt of Greece, Portugal, and Spain. And those are the countries that were the epicenter of the 2011 European debt crisis, as you may recall. France, that is a founding member of the EU, a nuclear power, and a home to the world's most closely watched central bureaucracy, is now seen as more unstable than countries that it once lectured about fiscal responsibility. And the danger isn't just immediate market jitters, it's what comes next. That's really the bigger problem. The presidential election in 2027 looms like a dark cloud over Macron's head. If the right or the left wins and then implements even half of their spending promises, analysts warn that France could face a truly explosive freak-out moment in bond markets. So it will be really interesting to observe what happens in 2027. We're virtually a year away. But the deeper danger is something more subtle, I would say. And the danger is that France enters a long period of decline, that it becomes, as one political commentator put it, paralyzed by chaos, impotence, and debt, a country with immense strength but no political capacity to use those things. There are, of course, people who believe that France will muddle through and emerge just fine from this crisis. They point to its wealth, its infrastructure, and its institutions. They also argue that France is too big to fail, too central to Europe's stability to truly collapse. But others see something more ominous in this. They see a nation that is trapped by its own contradictions. Too generous to cut spending, too exhausted to raise taxes, and too divided to reform, as well as too indebted to borrow and too politically fractured to govern itself. And if this trend continues, France may emerge from this decade permanently weakened, with the left, the right, and the hollowed-out center being quite incapable of holding the system together. A country drifting into exactly the position that it once mocked, in other words. A country at risk of becoming the new sick man of Europe after Germany. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are on this topic. If you're from France, we would love to hear from you. Drop a comment in the comment section below. If you would like more content, join me on Substack and Patreon. Support my work. I truly appreciate every single one of you who has become a paid subscriber. Thank you so much. Like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Bye for now.